Are you wondering how to see the Pope in Rome? One of the best ways to see him is to attend the Papal Audience. If you're new here, I'm Alyssa, founder of the Romewise and Florencewise websites and this YouTube channel. I'm married to a Roman, I've lived in Rome since 2001, I love Rome, and I know it like the back of my hand. And on this channel, I share my top tips and tricks so you can have your best visit here. In this video, I'll share everything you need to know about the Papal Audience, what it is, how to get tickets, and my secret strategies for how to get the best spot and see Pope Leo up close. I'm going to bring you with me as I collect my tickets, as I stand in line and go through security, as I make my way through the square and get my seat. You'll see what the whole Papal Audience is like, from waiting for it all to start, to when Pope Leo comes out and drives through the crowds, to when he passes right by me. And you're going to want to stay to the end of this video because I've got a hot tip for you that most people don't know about. One thing to note is that I'm making this video for you during the 2025 Jubilee Year. Pilgrims are coming from all over the world, and being in St. Peter's Square with all of these people is something really special, something I'll never forget. Also, attending the Papal Audience for this video was special for me for another reason. Since I moved here in 2001, I was lucky enough to see Pope Francis on several different occasions, giving the Papal Audience, holding papal masses, and giving the Angelus. But the Papal Audiences that I attended to make this video for you were the first time that I got to see Pope Leo give the Papal Audience. I'm gonna guess it's pretty special for Pope Leo too, because he was only recently elected this past spring, and this is his first Jubilee year. So he's holding these audiences during a Jubilee year when there are literally thousands of pilgrims in attendance. But don't think that it's gonna be any less crowded at the Papal Audience when the Jubilee is over. The Papal Audience is a popular event with everyone, whether you're Catholic or not. Tickets are free, it's relatively easy to attend, and it's a great way to spend a Wednesday morning at the Vatican. So what exactly is a Papal Audience? The Papal Audience is not a mass. It's a weekly event where the Pope comes out to greet visitors and pilgrims from around the world. There's a short message in several languages, some prayers and music, and a blessing over the crowd. The Pope also greets newly married couples. The audience itself lasts a little over an hour, but you're going to need most of your morning to attend. The Papal Audience is held every Wednesday when the Pope is in town. You can check his schedule by visiting the official Vatican website, which I'm linking to in the description below. Now, it's important to know what the Papal Audience is not. This is not a private audience with the Pope. If you attend, you'll be one of tens of thousands of people, either in St. Peter's Square or in the Pope Paul VI Hall. The Papal Audience is free for everyone, but you do need a ticket. So how do you get your tickets to attend the Papal Audience? The distribution of tickets for the Papal Audience is handled by one entity inside the Vatican, specifically the Prefecture of the Papal Household. So the easiest way to request tickets is directly through them. In the description below, I'm linking to the page where you can request your Papal Audience tickets directly through the Prefecture of the Papal Household. You simply fill out the form, and within 24 hours, you should receive a positive response. If you're American, you can also send your request through the North American Pontifical College. This used to be a good alternative back in the days when the Vatican website was a little unwieldy and difficult to use. But if you submit your request to them, they in turn have to submit your request to the Prefecture of the Papal Household. So really, you're just adding a step to the process. And so on their website, they say that in order for them to process your request, you need to submit your request at least 2 weeks in advance. So while I don't really think this is the best option, I'm going to link to their official website in the description below. Now, if you've arrived in Rome and you didn't realize you could attend the Papal Audience, or you didn't know that you had to get tickets, there is another way to get them. You can come down to St. Peter's Basilica the day before the audience between 3 and 7 p.m. and request tickets at the bronze door where the Swiss guards stand. They usually have plenty of extra tickets on hand for people who didn't request them in time. And even on the morning of the Papal Audience, if you've arrived without tickets, you can go from 7:30 a.m. up to the Swiss guard at the bronze door and ask for tickets. Again, they usually have tickets available for people who didn't request them in time. There is one final way that you can request tickets to the Papal Audience, and that is to purchase them. So why would you purchase tickets when it's free to attend the Papal Audience? Many tour companies offer something called the Papal Audience experience. What this experience includes is the fact that they get your tickets for you, they have a meeting point the morning of the audience, usually it's about 7 a.m., they guide you into the square, help you get the best seats, and they give you some historical information along the way. So it's not quite a full tour, but it is a more complete experience. A friend of mine did this one year and she was really happy she did it because she's the kind of person who does not like to have to do all these things, you know, ordering tickets in advance, going to pick them up, getting down there and trying to figure out where to go. So for her, it was really worth the money. You know, I've seen a lot of comments online from people who berate these tour companies for charging a fee for tickets that are supposed to be free, and for tourists who sort of fall for this when they should be going for free and not paying some entity. But the companies are providing a service. A little later in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of these tour companies that offer this service. All right, so I've told you how to request your tickets directly through the prefecture of the papal household. But once you're granted your tickets, how do you get them? In the email that you receive from the prefecture of the papal household informing you that you've been granted tickets, they'll let you know when and where to collect them. You pick up your tickets for the papal audience at the bronze door, where the Swiss guards stand. This door is underneath Bernini's colonnade, and it's right before St. Peter's Basilica, but after you go through security. So you must go through security to get to the bronze door. You'll be told that you can collect your tickets either the afternoon prior to the audience between the hours of 3 and 7 p.m. or the morning of the audience from 7:30 a.m. onward. A savvy visitor would think that collecting the tickets the day before would be the best option, because that way when you come down the morning of the audience, you simply stand in line and go in without having to add the extra step of picking up your ticket. On the other hand, this does mean spending an extra afternoon at the Vatican just to collect your tickets. So what's the best option here? Let me show you what I did. I decided that I was going to be savvy and collect my tickets the day prior to the audience so that the morning of the audience I could get in line before 7 a.m. because I knew that getting in line early would help me get close to the front so that I could race to get some of the best seats. So with my email in hand, I arrived at St. Peter's Basilica at 3 o'clock on Tuesday before the audience. I collected my tickets at 5:15 p.m. Even though when I got there were people telling us to stand in one line off to the right if we were just there to collect tickets for the papal audience, there was still so many people to go through security. But even once through security, we then had to stand in another line to wait to go through that bronze door where the Swiss guards stand to collect our tickets. I waited in each line for easily over an hour. Now, once I collected my tickets at 5:15 p.m., I did go ahead and go inside of St. Peter's Basilica because I was already in. I'd already gone through security, so I went inside the Basilica. But I was pretty wiped out, I have to tell you. Okay, so I had my tickets in hand. The next morning, I'm going to go down there really early because I want to get in line and be one of the first people onto the square so I can race to get close to the front and close to the side aisles where the Pope passes. I got down there at 6:20 to have a coffee and meet my friend who was coming with me. I'm right here in front of the McDonald's, but I just discovered there's actually another bar right in front of McDonald's, so if you get down here before 6:30 when McDonald's opens, the bar is actually open even earlier. Anyway, I just wanted to come down here, have a quick coffee, and use the restroom before going over to St. Peter's Square to wait for the papal audience to begin. We went to stand in line at 6:30, and it was already hundreds and hundreds of people long. Okay, this is 6:30 a.m. At this point, there's really nothing you can do. And as it turns out, you start kind of talking to people around you, and there's camaraderie because you're all in this together. We watched the whole crowd around us. We watched the line forming behind us. We watched the sky turn from dark to dawn to sunrise. At 7:30, they opened the security gates. And despite having gotten a pretty decent spot because I got there at 6:30 a.m., I wasn't standing on St. Peter's Square having gone through security until 8:15, so 45 minutes in the security line. And I don't even know how long it took all the people who had arrived after me. All right, so it's 8:15, I'm standing on St. Peter's Square with my friend. The audience isn't due to start until 10 a.m., but a lot of things start happening before that. The Pope comes out around 20 minutes before the audience starts so he can go through the crowd. So we have plenty of time. Now it's time for my friend and I to go find some good seats. Did I mention that nobody asked to see our tickets? Anyway, we raced towards the front. We got as close as we could. We were in the second section back, about 10 or 15 aisles back, and we were maybe 10 in from the side aisle. The ideal place to stand for the papal audience so that you can see Pope Leo up close when he passes through the crowd is along one of the side aisles, specifically where you see some of the pink bunting. Once we were finally seated and calmed down, I needed to use the restroom. I went to where one of the gendarmes was standing underneath the colonnade, and I asked to use the restroom, and he showed me where it was. There is a huge, really clean restroom under the colonnade just past the Swiss guard where we picked up our tickets. So that's definitely a good thing to know because you'll be spending many hours in this square. When I came back out, I stopped and I talked to the gendarme for a moment. I said, you know, I'm just curious. I requested tickets to the papal audience. I spent 2 hours here yesterday collecting my tickets, and this morning nobody asked to see my tickets. What's up with that? And he said, well, what color is your ticket? And I said, yellow. And he said, oh, okay, well, you have a ticket where you can sit pretty much anywhere. And he said, where are you sitting? And I showed him, and he said, why don't you sit one section up? And I said, at the front? And he said, yeah. I thought, oh, okay, interesting. I said, okay, that's fine, but I still don't understand why I had to get a ticket when nobody asked to see it. And he said, well, you know, we have to have this ticketing system in place because we have to know how many people to expect for staffing and security purposes. I said, okay, fair enough, but again, why did I have to collect my ticket? And he said, well, you know, a lot of people like them for souvenirs. And I said, does this mean that I didn't need to book a ticket in advance and come down here and collect it? And he said, well, you know, a lot of people come without tickets, and we're never going to say no to somebody who wants to attend the papal audience, even if they don't have a ticket. But then he clarified and he said, you know, on occasion, they won't let people in without a ticket for the first hour, and then after that, they start letting people in. He also said that sometimes there are different color tickets, and the different colors can mean different sections. So what I took away from that was that if you really want to do everything the right way, book your tickets in advance, collect them in advance, get down to the papal audience early so you can get through the security gates right when they open, be able to get into the square as soon as possible and race for those good seats, and have a ticket you can take home with you, then that's the way to go. In just a moment, I'm going to show you what it's like to come down to the papal audience without a ticket, just as the gendarme suggested I could. But first I want to show you what the rest of the papal audience is like. So once you're seated, you just wait for things to start happening, but there's a vibe. It's kind of busy and people are talking to each other and people are waving flags and people are getting excited, and somehow the time passes really quickly. About 20 minutes before the audience is due to start, the Pope comes out and rides through the crowd. For me, the ideal spot is to be as close to the center aisle as possible and as close to the front as possible, because this way you get to see him twice. First when he passes by the front of the crowd, and last when he comes up through the center aisle to head to the stage to give the audience. But Pope Leo rides all through the crowd. He goes all the way back to the edges of the square, and he tries to see as many people as he can. Once the Pope is up on the platform, the audience begins. There are greetings in many different languages, usually given by clergy who speak those languages. The Pope says a homily, maybe there's some prayers, some music. It lasts for about an hour. Just a note, in the really hot summer months, the audience begins earlier than 10 a.m., so check your tickets for the start time. Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. So at about 11 o'clock, the audience was over, and we were told that we could enter St. Peter's Basilica, which was great because we'd already gone through security. You're there, you might as well go inside. Okay, so the audience ended at 11, and we came straight into the Basilica, but they don't let you into the Basilica actually. You go in through the basement because the Pope is still on the stage. It's 11:05 and we're going in via the basement. So we're here in the basement. This is where the restrooms are. This is where the lift is. And this is where you go to buy tickets to climb the dome. It's also where you access the grottos. And although I didn't climb the dome on this occasion, they did say that the dome was open. So if that's something you want to do after the Papal Audience, you can go ahead and do so. You probably can't pre-book your dome climb tickets for the morning of the Papal Audience, but you should just be able to walk right up and purchase your tickets on site without too much of a line. Many people ask me if it's a good idea to visit the Vatican museums after the Papal Audience. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. First, I want to take you with me to the Papal Audience a second time. All right, Papal Audience round 2. 2 weeks after the Papal Audience I attended that I just showed you, I went back, this time without a ticket. I wanted to see if what the gendarme had told me was true, that I could just show up without a ticket and still get in. I wanted to see what it was like to try to find a seat without a ticket, if anybody would ask to see my ticket. And I wanted to see if I really needed to get down there at 6:20 in the morning. So I showed up at the Vatican at 8:30 a.m. on the morning of the Papal Audience. No ticket. This time, I came up Via della Conciliazione, the main street that leads to St. Peter's Square. There were some carabinieri there, they were checking bags. It's just a first filter, it's not really the full security check. Once they checked our bags, we got right up to the entrance of St. Peter's Square, and there was a line there to go through security. But that line was moving pretty quickly. My friend and I got in the security line at 8:45, and at 9 a.m. we were standing in St. Peter's Square. It's taken 15 minutes to go through that huge line and go through security, and now I'm standing in St. Peter's Square. Nobody has asked to see my ticket. So this is 45 minutes later than we were standing on St. Peter's Square 2 weeks prior. And the square had really filled up. Most of the seats were taken. Also, the first time when we got there at 8:15, we were able to freely make our way across the square and look for the section where we wanted to sit. By 9 a.m., they had the barricades really well organized so that there were clear passageways and clear areas where you could not enter any longer. So what I'm seeing is that they've got these barricades up and it's a little hard to get into the center, but we're going to try. At this point, I noticed that most people really didn't have a choice but to stand along the sides where there was an aisle which had that pink bunting, which meant that that was where Pope Leo would pass by. So I think that even just standing on the side, you have a pretty good chance of seeing Pope Leo pass close by you. Now, I can't guarantee that Pope Leo necessarily rides by every single section of the crowd in St. Peter's Square, but he does make a good effort to see as many people as possible. Now, even though all of these barricades were set up and there were clear aisles and it seemed really difficult or nearly impossible to get to the front, I did try, but the Swiss guard stopped me and asked to see my ticket. But here's the thing, even from the side, even from further back, we realized you can see Pope Leo pretty easily up on stage. You can also see him on the jumbotrons that they have in St. Peter's Square. And again, if what you really want is to see him as he rides through the crowd, you can see him from many points in the square, even further back. And frankly, further back, it's a lot less crowded than it is up close to the stage. All right, so here is my conclusion, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I recommend for you. If you really want a ticket to attend the Papal Audience and you want it for free the way it's meant to be, you can go through all of the steps. You can book on the Prefecture of the Papal Household website, wait for your email, go down and collect your ticket either the day before or the morning of the audience, get in that security line as early as you can, get onto the square, and look for a good seat. At the opposite end, if you don't want to deal with all of this, getting a ticket, standing in line, waiting to pick up your ticket, waiting these long security lines, getting up at the crack of dawn, you can do what I did, which is to go down there without a ticket at 8:30 and go through security and stand sort of further back in the square, and your chances of seeing Pope Leo riding close to you are pretty good. There is a third way, which is what I am going to recommend for those of you who want to go this route. As I mentioned earlier, there are tour agencies that will get your tickets for you, that will then meet you the morning of the audience, take you in and get you a really good seat up front and give you something of a mini tour. Yes, I know, the Papal Audience is supposed to be free, but here's the thing. For me, time is money. You know, when I went down there on the Tuesday afternoon prior to the first audience I attended and waited to collect my tickets, I was in line with a bunch of people who were visiting Rome, some for the first time. Now, I live here, and as many of you know, I do a lot of these experiences so that I can share them with you and show you what it's like. So for me, spending 2 hours in that line was part of my job. But the people who were waiting in line with me were really frustrated and even a little bit angry. They thought it was a terrible way to spend an afternoon in Rome when they had limited time here. Sure, you could go the morning of the audience and pick up your tickets then, but then you're not standing in the security line and you're going to get onto the square a little bit later and you won't have as much of a chance to get those good seats. And frankly, I think that would be a little bit stressful, not having tickets in hand, getting down there, having to wait to go collect your tickets, then stand in the line. I just think it's a lot. So while I don't really think that you need the tour part of it, I think that having somebody get your tickets for you alone makes it worth the price. But I also think that it's nice the morning of, you have a meeting point, you don't have to worry about where to go, you have somebody who's gonna take you in and lead you to the good seats. So I think this is a great option, but you're just gonna have to decide for yourself. Now, back to the question of, should you visit the Vatican museums after the Papal Audience? Now remember, you can visit St. Peter's Basilica either the day prior when you go pick up your tickets, after you pick them up at the Bronze Gate, you can just go right into St. Peter's Basilica then. Or you can visit St. Peter's Basilica directly after the audience because you're already in St. Peter's Square, you've already gone through security, so you can just go inside. And if you just visit the Basilica on its own without climbing the dome, you really only need about 30 to 40 minutes in there. So even though after waiting in that long line to collect my tickets on that Tuesday prior to the first Papal Audience, I was pretty tired, I decided to go into St. Peter's Basilica because it really doesn't take that much time and it's not so exhausting. Yes, you can easily spend hours in there. You could climb the dome, you can visit the papal crypts below, you could visit the Museum of the Treasury. But if you just want to go inside and walk around, it's not as exhausting as the Vatican museums. For me, after a long morning in St. Peter's Square and waiting for the Pope to come out and sitting through the audience, I think this is enough. I'm kind of done for the day and ready to maybe take a lunch break and do something else with my day. But for those of you with limited time, if this is the best time for you to visit the Vatican museums after the Papal Audience, by all means do so. I would suggest getting your tickets for no earlier than 2 p.m. and giving yourself a lunch break in between. Don't forget you need about 20 minutes or so to walk from St. Peter's Square all the way over to the Vatican Museums. The Vatican Museums, which is where the Sistine Chapel is, take about 2 hours to visit. So this can make for a really full day. Now, if you want to know the best way to time your Vatican visits, when to see St. Peter's Basilica, whether before or after the Vatican Museums, when to fit in the dome climb, and if you can even fit in a visit to the Vatican Gardens, watch this video.